6 teens have been charged after a botched jewelry store robbery in North York. The suspects were already being surveilled for allegedly stealing a car. Police releasing dramatic video of their capture from last Friday and again advising shop owners to step up security. As Nama Weingarten reports, this is the third time the store in North York has been targeted in about as many months.
Nice.
A crash and then a scatter. Video shows York Regional Police going after a group of teenagers after this jewelry store robbery gone wrong.
They are masked up, boys. They are ready to do something.
6 teens were ultimately charged, with one more suspect outstanding. Ami Freiberg owns the shop in North York. He tells us this is the third time this happened since December, and one of the times they stole hundreds of thousands worth of jewelry. But even with the security they've added since,
somebody's always going to try to do something, regardless. And whether they get in, don't get in, it affects you mentally, it affects you physically, and I feel sorry for our industry right now.
Smashing in the window with a hammer.
Police say the teens were already under surveillance for allegedly stealing a car found in Vaughan when they decided to rob this North York jewelry store, masked and armed with hammers, and got caught in the act.
We know that criminals try and diversify their portfolio. They're not committing one offense over and over again.
They're out of the vehicle, 2 of them. They're paused up. They were going to do it, but now they're boarding back in.
Now here's why they likely turned away. Police say they tried getting in just as 2 people were leaving, but the door had a 2-way lock, meaning they can't get in unless somebody opens it. Police also said they then tried breaking through the glass windows using their hammers, but the glass was shatterproof. York Regional Police also advising jewelers to step up security. They say they've investigated 5 jewelry store robberies and made 11 arrests since the beginning of the year. It's a problem that's gotten worse across the GTA and often perpetrated by teens.
What's very concerning is that all 6 of these suspects were youths. 3 of them were 16 and 3 of them were 17. And it is a trend that we've seen with these jewelry store smash and grab style robberies where the youths are actually being used to commit these offenses.
Police also say 3 of the suspects were out on release orders for unrelated offenses, something Freiberg finds troubling.
The court system lets them out that day, the next day, and that's all that's happening. It's a rotating door. Until these laws are changed, until a government realizes that people's lives are at stake, until, unfortunately, a jeweler is killed, or unfortunately one of these kids are killed, maybe the laws won't change.
This security advisor from Jewelers Vigilance Canada says these robberies are happening more because jewelry is easy to turn into cash, and you can steal it fast.
We're recommending that the jewelry stores have to take crime prevention into their own hands. It's not that the police don't want to do anything, but you see a lot of these jewelry store robberies are taking place in less than 2 or 3 minutes. And the response time from the police just can't be there in time, even if they want to.
Even though the store security measures were enough to ward off the suspects this time, the store's owner tells us that they're actually now planning to install a 3rd door right between these 2 to prepare for the next time robbers might come around. Nama Weingarten, CBC News, Toronto.
A woman is dead and a man in life-threatening condition after a fire broke out in a North York high-rise.
Crews forced the door to the unit of origin, were met with complete blackness, 0 visibility and high heat. They started their primary search immediately and were able to remove the first victim into the hallway, transported that person to the care of Toronto Paramedic Services, continued their primary search, and then located the second victim in the unit, and that victim as well was transported to the care of Toronto Paramedic Services. Unfortunately, one of the occupants of the building has been pronounced deceased.
The fire broke out on the 21st floor of an apartment on Grenoble Drive east of Don Mills. Crews responded around 3:30 this afternoon. Paramedics say the 2 victims are a woman in her 30s and a man in his 50s. They were both transported to local hospital in life-threatening condition, but the woman was later pronounced dead. Emergency crews say the fire didn't spread to other units and is now under control. Toronto police are investigating an overnight fire they suspect to be arson. Firefighters were called to an auto dealership in Etobicoke around 2:40 a.m.
Thermal imaging readings in the building, and we'll watch for any flare-ups and put them out as needed. Police have it taped off for their investigation. I don't know what's involved with that, but we have 2 crews here because it is deemed high value.
Police are looking into the cause but have no suspects at this time. This comes just one day after a fire at an Oakville auto dealership. And that fire has also been deemed suspicious. Investigators have not said if they believe the two incidents are connected. Premier Doug Ford was sworn in this afternoon along with his new cabinet. Not a lot of new faces, but some ministers have changed portfolios. All this as Ford focuses attention on fighting against Trump's trade war. Queen's Park reporter Lorena Redicott has more.
Premier Doug Ford in his third straight cabinet swearing in. He took his oath first.
I, Doug Ford, swear that I will duly and faithfully and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers.
Then his latest inner circle was unveiled, some staying put, including some closest to the tariff fight, Vic Fideli in economic development, and also the finance minister.
I, Peter Vattenfall, swear.
The energy minister expands his role, now also responsible for mines.
The world has changed. President Trump has upended the world order. And we're going to need every government, every regulator, every agency to move with absolute speed to get shovels in the ground on the essential mining and critical minerals that the world needs.
Another switch, Paul Calandra no longer in charge of housing. Housing starts have never kept pace with the government's goals.
To the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts proposed in me as Minister of Education of the province of Ontario, so help me God.
He takes over from Jill Dunlop, who moves to emergency preparedness. What could be seen as a demotion, Graydon Smith, no longer a minister at Natural Resources, but Associate Minister for Housing. Nolan Quinn's title gets longer, not just colleges and university, but also adding research excellence and security. The Premier's office saying the role will include looking out for foreign interference at post-secondary institutions. But the longest title for Greg Rickford, more than 20 words altogether, including Indigenous Affairs, but also responsible for the Ring of Fire economic and community partnerships. Key to this government strategy, given minerals in that remote area, and with the pitch against U.S. tariffs. That was the sole focus of Ford's speech.
But the last few months and the next few years are going to challenge our friendship with the United States like we've never seen before. Let's be clear, Canada will never be the 51st state. Canada is not for sale. And honestly, I'm getting chills all up and down my body right now.
The opposition leader was looking for some changes that did not happen in this cabinet.
In the last government, we had a minister of health who thought that the doctor shortage was not a major concern. We had a transportation minister who can't seem to get any of our major lines open. And we have an infrastructure minister who will not answer the questions of the people of Ontario. I'm very concerned. We need to see some change.
We're still a few weeks away from seeing these new ministers in their portfolios inside the legislature. The legislature is back on April 14th, and then the next day it'll be the speech from the throne. That's when the government lays out its new priorities. Lorena Redicott, CBC News, Toronto.
Colleges across Ontario have been cancelling courses ever since the federal government put a cap on international students. One of the latest to scale back, George Brown and its popular gemology program. And today, students made their voices heard. Ali Chiasson was at that protest.
We are the top producer of bench jewelers in Canada.
Without them, where is the local artisan supposed to hone their craft, let alone get the certifications to work in the industry?
To shut it down is not only a slap in the face, but also just so backwards because it's like we're regressing.
And that's what these gemology students say is at stake if their faculty shuts down in a time where people want to support local craftsmanship.
The average kind of age of a professional jeweler or goldsmith, here in this city, in this province, is already approaching retirement age. So we're at the precipice of creating an entire new industry with new people from all walks of life, all backgrounds.
George Brown College, like most post-secondary institutions, is under financial pressure since the federal government tightened restrictions on international student admissions. Since their tuition is many times higher than what domestic students pay, they've kept colleges afloat while the province has frozen tuition rates. These students say they shouldn't bear the brunt of that.
We're being treated as the first line of, defense for recovering some money for the college.
George Brown hasn't completely shut the program down, and partly because of low enrollment, they say, they aren't accepting new students in the fall for most gemology courses. But it's enough to send these students marching across campus, and they have industry vets like optician Mel Rapp behind them.
I don't think I've ever really appreciated how eyewear could be jewelry. I mean, this example here with the hands on the arms, I just find so darling, and I consider the work into it.
Rapp learned to make his own frames at the gemology program at George Brown. It's what he's known for at his busy shop.
We've got a bridge which is soldered to the two eye rims. This is an execution of jewelry as I would use in my industry. All the detail on this aluminum trim, it's very ornate, and this is jewelry.
As a local artisan and business owner for 40 years, he agrees with the students that we're in a time when local industry needs to be nurtured.
We need to know how to make things, because making things gives us independence. So the future is at stake to some degree. It's about, the future of industry.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
It may feel like spring outside today, but snow was on the city's mind. It's still trying to figure out what took so long to clear the snow this winter, with the mayor asking for a full review. Lane Harrison has more.
Yes or no, were there broken plows?
Yes, there were plows that required lots of maintenance.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Toronto staff were pushed for an explanation on the city's recent snow clearing, or a lack thereof, at today's meeting.
With a storm of that duration, there are breakdowns and repairs and maintenance and malfunctions that need to be corrected during that time. So we did not have the full complement of those plows out.
As councillors and even the mayor channeled frustrations felt by many in the city this year, when sidewalks were still covered in snow a week after storms.
In terms of the roads, they were open. There wasn't much of a problem. The sidewalk is a totally different story.
Olivia Chow is asking for a total review of the winter maintenance operations to figure out what went wrong, after the city got more than 50 centimeters of snow in less than 10 days in February. It will look at what the city could have done better and how its contractors, who are responsible for 70% of the work, performed.
This is after they plowed it, okay? It was pretty open. And then this one is in Scarborough. The contractor came in, and guess what? It made it worse.
Councillor Josh Matlow says he's always had concerns about snow removal contracts signed before Chow's time as mayor, saying the decision was rushed. Part of the review would look into those contracts and if any of them should be axed.
I believe that the City of Toronto's snow clearing strategy needs to be far better than simply waiting for spring to arrive. And that's what happened this year.
He says cities like Montreal have figured out how to do it, so Toronto should, putting forward an amendment to Chow's motion that would see the city look at other places for best practices.
I know that we can do better because we're in a Canadian city.
The mayor's request for the review passed at the committee, meaning it will go in front of City Council next week. Lane Harrison, CBC News, Toronto.
Smile for Sachi, an organization formed in the name of a man who lost his life to gun violence in Toronto, held its annual Feed the Fasting initiative tonight.
4 years ago, my younger brother was murdered due to gun violence. So that year we decided to feed people during Ramadan, and we've been doing it for 4 years now. And we have people in the community that also face the same issues as us. So we bring them together, and every day we just make food. It's a healing experience, and we just get to give back to our community.
The project has provided more than 13,000 meals to underserved communities, including newcomers. The initiative addresses food insecurity and serves as a healing space for families impacted by gun violence. Each day of Ramadan is dedicated to the memory of a lost loved one. Welcome back. Some exciting news for soccer fans in the city. The men's national team has added a few more games to their schedule this summer as part of a new tournament called the Canadian Shield, with all the matches being played at BMO Field.
It brings people together. That's what sports does, and it unites us no matter where the sports teams are. It also builds a lot of the momentum as we go and host the FIFA World Cup in 2026, where the world is going to come to Toronto.
The friendly competition will feature 4 teams: Canada, Ukraine, the Ivory Coast, and New Zealand. Each nation will play 2 matches, and each one will require a winner, meaning it will go to a penalty shootout if the game is tied at the end of regulation. Canada Soccer says this will be a yearly event, adding it's another step to growing the sport in the country. The competition will take place on June 7th and 10th. The Toronto Maple Leafs recently let their season ticket holders know that prices are going up next season, and it's a pretty big hike. In some cases, people are being asked to pay as much as 20% more than they paid this season. Greg Ross has more.
On Monday night, while the Leafs were doing this on the ice at Scotiabank Arena, Danny Russell was there in the seats with his son Patrick, thanks to a pair of season tickets he's owned for decades.
These have been in my family since the 40s.
His father originally purchased a pair of corner reds at Maple Leaf Gardens. They now sit in corner golds at Scotiabank Arena. Russell recently found out what it's going to cost him to keep those seats for next season.
$28,240.
That $28,240 is more than a $2,000 increase over what he paid this season. He says in the last 7 years, they've gone up more than $10,000.
It's frustrating that a true fan can't afford to go to as many games as he would like because it's just too much money.
The Leafs say ticket prices are going up anywhere from 3 to 20% for next season. Only about 700 tickets will increase by 20%. The average ticket increase will be just under 9%. Russell admits he has to sell the majority of his tickets.
I can't afford to go to every game.
And that's just what he pays for regular season games. He also recently received notice about this year's playoff tickets. In order to purchase the maximum number of home games, which is 16, it would cost him an additional $36,142. The Leafs sell each round separately, with prices escalating the farther the Leafs go.
The first round is 5,184. Second round is 6,224. Third round is 9,886. And the last round is $14,848.
Down the ice, one man back, Keon closing in.
Russell was at Maple Leaf Gardens with his father the last time the Leafs won the Stanley Cup in 1967.
Oh yeah, I've been in the corner Reds with my dad.
He says back then, tickets were a fraction of what they are now. He's not sure he could afford to take his son to a Stanley Cup final game this year if the Leafs make it that far. 2 tickets for one game would cost more than $3,700.
If they get to the finals, my son thinks he's going to the games. I said, no, we're not paying that much. I'll go into debt, Dad.
He says if the Leafs make it that far, he'll think about it. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Rogers Centre will host fans for the first Toronto Blue Jays home game next week, and they're giving us a sneak peek at some interesting new food items hitting the menu. If you've ever wanted cotton candy fries, well, you can get them at a Jays game. If that doesn't satisfy your sweet tooth, you can grab some blueberry or Oreo-flavored mini pancakes. There's also Korean fried chicken, chicken gyoza, and the classic hot dog, of course, with many mocktail and cocktail options also available. The Jays kick off a 4-game homestand against the Baltimore Orioles next Thursday. Colette joins us now with a check on the forecast. And Colette, still technically winter today, but it definitely felt like spring.
Yeah, it seems like the timing's just a little bit off. The last full day of winter and some incredible numbers on the boards in terms of the temperatures, up to 21 degrees in Toronto. Not actually a record. We had a very warm week back in 2012, and the records from that year, 21 for Windsor. How about St. Catharines at 23 degrees? And with the influence of the Lake Kingston, yeah, only 12 degrees, but inland a little bit, some milder temperatures even there to enjoy as well, and even the nation's capital. into the teens at 14 degrees. So we've had this ridge. It's brought us these mild temperatures. Notice I'm starting to use the language and put that in the past tense, brought, because colder air in this trough is moving in, and actually some pretty active weather has been stateside, but also into northern Ontario with some significant snow in the forecast for northeastern Ontario. And yet here we go. Spring begins tomorrow at 5:01 a.m., our vernal equinox. So we will find the temperatures and everything kind of flip-flops as we actually begin spring. The winds will pick up as well. We do have some showers overnight tonight into early tomorrow. Now, there'll still be a few bands into the afternoon, a little bit lighter, though, in nature as we get into the afternoon hours. And then, yes, you see it as the temperature falls behind the cold front. We'll actually have our temperature dropping into the afternoon hours. There's even a chance that we could have a few flurries flying into the late afternoon and early evening hours. At least we're not looking at the winter storm warnings like I was mentioning in northeastern Ontario, where 20 to even 30 centimeters or more of snowfall is anticipated there. So, okay, we can handle a few flurries through the GTA. We will clear out after that. It sets us up for nice sky conditions on Friday. A lot of sunshine will be around until late day Friday. So Friday night into Saturday, another system swings through with some light showery activity. Just looking at what comes through overnight tonight into tomorrow, it's pretty light, less than 5 millimeters for the Golden Horseshoe, but eastern Ontario could pick up something a little more significant. Overnight temperatures, they hold. They're mild, double digits for Toronto, but just know that that temperature may warm another degree or so up to 12, but then it's going to be dropping into the afternoon. So it gets colder as the northwesterly winds will be gusting over 50 kilometers an hour at times. -2 by Thursday night. Friday's daytime high closer to seasonal with a high of 8.
Thanks so much, Colette. And that is our show for you tonight. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night, everyone.